Hi, it's Norman Kochnick here from Eyes on Cricket with Norman Kochnick. I say that all the time. I'm getting some people saying I shouldn't. Some people say I should, but we'll go with it. James Dean's online. We've got Munchie online. We've got a few more. We've got quite a few more. Chris Fan Club. Music Harmonies there. Yamini Pandey. I don't think I've come across Yamini before. And obviously, I have more importantly, or not equally as importantly, Simon Willis. I've got to be careful with my words here. At 2020 Fledglings Cricket, and I'm very impressed with what you're. Hi, Simon.
Good morning from the UK. It's a little bit later where you are, but
it's much later, right? I must say, Chris, I obviously follow your posts quite religiously, and your breadth of contact is amazing. Now, female cricket, obviously men's cricket, across the board, you're extremely well respected. You had the connection to Rowing Peterson, of course, with Daniel, isn't it? Daniel?
That's right. Yeah, Daniel played there. Daniel Drummond.
And he's an amazing player, and it's great because they talk all highly of you. But it's not just talking about a person alone; it's what you achieve through your cricket. And I'm very happy to have you here today. We've obviously got Chris Vernon coming on shortly as well, and this match is probably going to be, I would argue, one of the most significant because it could work. It's a decider effectively.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the way that England played yesterday, if they can arrest that momentum or keep that momentum, I should say, and India are able to arrest it and be able to change it, it's England's there for the taking. But having seen what's gone on so far, we've had an ebb and flow. We've had obviously the England victory, Indian victory, England victory. It seems to be an undulation going on there quite a bit. And I guess the toss is the most important, as I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah, you've got the two best teams in the world playing, and it is coming down at the moment to the toss. Now, there's a couple of things at the back of my mind. One, the World Cup final, T20 finals being played at this stadium. You wouldn't want a World Cup T20 final based on the toss. That would be disappointing.
Yes.
And the other side of it is I'd really like to see this England team, the team that played the last game with Wood in it, try and win a game the other way. There are 2 games to go. It's been dominant by the team batting second. I'd love to see this team with that extra firepower of Wood in it bat first and try and win it that way. Because I think that's, they might have to do it. They might have to do it the hard way. So with 2 games to go, 2-1 up in the series, you never know with Morgan. He might suddenly say, we have to have this experience. We need something to learn from in case when we come back here later in the year that's what we're faced with. So yeah, the next 2 games are like finals, aren't they? It's great, that there's so much on it for two really, really good teams.
That's an amazing thought. I think that's I'm hoping Alan Morgan is listening to this conversation because, quite frankly, that to me would be a masterstroke to be able to test his own team when he may well win the toss and have the choice. For him to do that, his team would be challenged, and I think it's an appropriate time. They can afford to lose, and that's a way of describing it. You could argue today. So why not experiment and prove how good they are? And look, that's a great point. I think that's very relevant and something that I hadn't thought of. It's amazing. We've got a number of these so-called members now. I must make it clear to people who are becoming members, you apparently can't get it on an iPhone and even sometimes an iPad. You actually have to go back to your proper laptop or a more sizable computer which has the breadth of membership. Some countries have it, some don't. On the smaller devices, some in fact have to go to a fuller device. So I had a number of people from America ask me, and I've actually had to make it clear to them, try their laptops, and they actually, I believe, have found that the way to do it. But the membership will be great in the future. We've got a lot of people which we can bring into play. Hopefully this band of merry men and women come together and we can be there in both the likes areas of England, even the West Indies. Who knows? Obviously India. I saw Lisa Stillake has been there a fair bit. She's a good friend of mine. She was on, she's been involved with the Road Safety World Series.
Oh, okay.
I think she's actually, I wouldn't say stuck in India, but she certainly hasn't moved and she's been there for quite a while now, which is advantageous.
She'll probably stay on for the IPL as well, I would imagine.
I've got no doubt. I spoke to her about almost 2 months ago. She said, Norman, I'm going to be in India for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So
As you
she
say,
made
there
a
are
pretty.
worse places to be, especially where I'm sure she's staying at the moment, will be quite comfortable.
Sure.
Yeah, but from a cricket perspective, have you watched any of the legend stuff? There's been some really good
Oh,
cricket going on, actually.
amazing cricket. In fact, India have been outstanding. They did very well in the semi-final, didn't they? Against it was the West Indies.
Yeah,
And they did particularly well. I'm super impressed with Sachin's performances, and even Monty. My heavens, he bowled sensationally, but they lost, which was unfortunate. So
yeah, absolutely.
we've been trying to get a hold of him to do something for us. You could argue exclusively, but there's a few aspects with the colour TV that they're not that keen to let him do that. But I'm sure we'll get plenty of word from him when he gets back. He's there for a little while longer, apparently. He's hoping to get involved in the IPL. I'm not sure whether he'll be in that involved at this point. So we've got Music Harmony and the Chris fan club, who we haven't got to the bottom of it yet. I'm actually thinking it's Adam Hollyoak, because there's been some comments there about 6-1, 7-1, 8-1, which only he would be able to talk about. And Chris fan club have actually been fantastic. And as you can see, can you see there, Simon, the green and the
Yes.
little emoji? That's an indication.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really, really, really good idea. It's slowly but surely building. Ingles there, Wood's status and has been decimated if he would have played the second game. Well, are you talking there about if he had played, England may have been well ahead and not have, they may well have been 3-0 up as opposed to 2-1.
Well, I suppose that's the question I'm asking is, with that extra firepower, would that make a difference? Obviously, Tom Curran coming in, that gave India a chance to kind of take advantage of his lesser pace, whereas it's really tough when you've got, Wood, Archer coming in, then you've got the spin aspect. There's 12 overs gone already. Sam Curran, it's a decent attack. So for me, that's the one question at the back of my mind at the moment is, can that attack, and I do believe it's a better attack than India's, can they do it the other way around? Can they do it, with the due factor against them? Because if they can do that, then they're going to be really tough to beat when it comes to the T20 World Cup.
Do you think, and the word experimentation has been bandied around quite a bit about the series, and I think I spoke quite heavily with Chris about that. I'm vehemently against that thought process. I know they need to test them. So your point's different, though. It's about where they bat. But when you experiment with team members for the sake of testing how they will play, I still believe the position of playing for their country is so important that it shouldn't be used as a form of experimentation.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from, and it's probably kind of our eras, isn't it? That to gain an international cap is something massive, and certainly when I was playing, nobody wanted to give you an opportunity. They wanted to play every game and get as many caps as they can. I suppose nowadays there's so much cricket being played that that the players want to be ready for the big tournaments, as it were. So they're more accommodating when it comes to this player rotation policy. India just astonishes me because the domestic series, at home in particular, they do give players opportunities. Like we've already seen in this T20 series. They've given a couple of debutants goes, and that is a consistent theme. I think India are definitely going to use this series against England and the IPL to finalise their team. And it wouldn't surprise me if someone in the IPL comes out the pack, someone that isn't currently involved comes out the pack and forms part of their unit going into that World Cup.
Well, that's kind of exciting, isn't it? From that perspective, it leaves the door open for players to still strive for that and not be somewhat despondent and not making it. I guess I have to change my attitude a bit there because I would never have thought that openly.
Yeah.
And it's becoming a realization for me that is the case.
I think you see with England, though, they're not chopping and changing so much with this T20 side.
No.
I think the Test side, they're conscious of a very heavy workload this calendar year, whereas Owen Morgan knows this is their last chance. really. This is their last chance to really nail down some confidence and their team. So I don't think England will be chopping and changing. Saying that, it wouldn't surprise me, actually, if Owen Morgan didn't pick himself today. Again, because of that reason of the World Cup, if he got injured, who would skipper the side? So that wouldn't surprise me either, because, you know, Owen does things like this. He thinks outside the box and isn't afraid to do things differently.
Yeah, I mean that's why he is the captain of this team. Because let's be honest, to be a T20 captain, innovation is the name of the game. But what we're discussing, experimentation. I don't like the word, but yeah, it is a form of constructive experimentation. That's a way of coining it. The reality is that when you're doing your work as a coach, do you have a different mindset for the longer form as opposed to the shorter form?
Sorry, Norman, I just lost you a little bit there at the end.
No, I was just saying, do you have a different mindset for the longer form as opposed to the shorter form when you're coaching? Do you have
very much. And, you know, obviously T20 is the golden egg for players now, and everybody wants to play in the IPL because of the money that's associated with it. But I still believe the top performers consistently have good basic techniques based around Test cricket. So Kane Williamson is a great example. Okay. Whereas if you look at the other way around, guys who've just gone straight in with T20 techniques, shall we say, struggle with the moving ball because they're going at the ball so hard that they can't control it. And yeah, for me, I suppose David Warner's the only real player that's gone from T20, making his name in T20, and then adjusting to Test cricket, where there's a hell of a lot more players going the other way. You know, Joe Root had a period where he was running hot in T20 cricket. So there are lots of examples. Your Jai Wardners, your Sangakaras, your Mike Husses, all based around a solid Test match technique that can grow. You know, it's not. There's a lot of chat about power hitting. Well, my view on it, it's about clean ball striking, which is very different. Because power hitting, yes, you can hit it out the stadium, but you don't get any more runs for it. It's only got to go over the white line and clear the fielder. So for me, it's about clean ball striking, and the more consistent you can become at that, then the better. So
that's a great point.
Yeah, so that's my thoughts, and that's the way I coach. You know, I think Shane Warne always said, you know, make sure your basics are outstanding, and if you've got those, you can do all the funky stuff on the back of it.
It was interesting. I saw a report as to the batting of Josh Butler with Flintoff, and they batted together. And Keys was the bowler, and I think that's the same as Common. And there was discussion about how far they hit the ball, but you're exactly right. Whether they hit it 70 or over the boundary or 100, it's irrelevant. And the way that Josh Butler would close off his shot and use a lot more wrists and a lot more bottom hand certainly works for him. But by closing it off, he's actually taking away potentially an angle that he can hit the ball. And on top of that, he can actually miss-hit it with he's got a high percentage of miss-hitting, is what you're describing. Now, I'm not saying Josh Butler's in that form, but when you wrist the ball as in flick it and have more emotion and it goes in an angle and not straight on, you've got less of the surface of the bat being used.
Oh, absolutely, and ultimately it's about hip rotation. That's the difference between your ball strike. So when you're hitting the ball aerial, you know, it's a little bit like a golfer teeing off. You know, your hips come through a lot earlier, so you can get that elevation. Whereas when you're looking to hit the ball on the ground, you're leaving your hips behind a little bit longer so that you can hit on top of the bounce. So it's understanding that process, really. But the danger is with players, and I found this working with players who've played a lot of T20 and do a lot of ball striking. You know, when they go straight back to the red ball, they can struggle a little bit because they're just getting through the ball too early and maybe not tracking the ball as longer, because obviously the white ball doesn't do as much, and therefore that exposes them. So it's understanding that, I think, as a coach, and trying to make players aware of that.
I mean, and that's, and he also talked about, Josh Butler talked about the ball, which is like say from a Bumrah or a Malinga, where the ball's coming in at his feet. He positioned his bat differently on an angle going out, so the ball would actually, or even more side on as well, so the ball would hit the bat and go out, which was very ingenious. But the element of risk or the element of execution there is beyond the average player. So it's an interesting balance between clean ball striking, as you're describing, as opposed to that masterly effort that he can pull off, but not all the time. And I think that's lost on him. I think the way that Flintoff hit the ball was somewhat effortless, and generally was in the middle of the bat. He wasn't really a bad time of the ball, I thought, generally, even though he was a big hitter, which is an interesting component. I'm not exactly sure what. Just bear with me. I think we've got Chris ringing me. I'll just, before I talk to Chris, I just needed to be able to look at the comment there from Vasant Narayan. He has said, "Hi Norman, can you ask Simon, which is obviously you, how should selectors be decided on, and how can?" Sorry, let's read it again. On how should selection be decided, and how can consistency be maintained in winning matches if the person loses form and technique? How would you deal with this? Would you persist with them, or would you act more swiftly?
Well, that's a really big question. The first point around selection is, for me, is very much you've got to agree on a strategy first of all. And given the calendar that you're facing, for me, it was always about making sure we've got our best players ready for the big matches. So whether that's a big series, i.e. England, Australia, or whether that's a World Cup tournament, I want my best players ready for that. So we would always work back with our strategy and look if there's any opportunities where we might be able to rest players or rotate players, whatever the in phrase is at the moment, to allow other players to come in and have that opportunity. When it comes to players in and out of form, again, it's a tough one. You've got to weigh up all the questions at that time. How long has the player been out of form? What conditions has the player been out of form? What's going on in his personal life? Because sometimes it's nothing to do with cricket. It's off the field stuff. He might be having challenges at home. He might have had a newly born child that's keeping him up all night. So you've really got to dig deep and find out what the root cause is. And sometimes it is, look, just get away from the game for a bit. Have a few weeks off, go away, do some other stuff, refresh your mind, and then come back when you're ready. It might be that a player needs to go and have some time in the middle. From a Test cricket point of view, you're only 3 hours away from getting back into form. Is my phrase. So go and just find some form. Go and have some time in the middle in a domestic game, and get that confidence back. Because top players are top players for a reason. Form does fluctuate, but it's understanding the needs of that player at that time and trying to make the decisions accordingly.
That's excellent advice. I guess when it comes to form, I always hark back to a Greg Chappell. I know that was a different era, but he had 7 ducks in a row, and people were thinking, what's going on here? But there's the persistence of a player of that type. We knew he would come good. We knew his abilities were always there. You'd have to argue Rahul's in the same boat. Certainly Kohli had a small glimmer of a bad period, but look what he did the last 2 innings. It's hard to take that out of the equation. I mean, even Chris Vernon, if he was online, would agree with me. Oh, he's there. Hello, Chris.
Good afternoon.
Yeah,
sorry about that. I had a Zoom client call today, so I had to
cashing in again then.
Well, I try my best. got to we're not all rich coaches.
If only.
We actually had your Chris fan club. I think they began to worry a little bit. There was a bit of a jitter going on, but now they're here.
Norm, I'm conscious. I think we missed a question earlier, and I might be wrong. Someone asked me a question on there about the West Indies. Can't remember.
Well, there's also one from Black Magic I've just noticed as well.
Okay.
Where you look, and I'll ask the question of from Black Magic.
Yeah.
Hello,
Okay.
Norman and Simon Sir. Well, I hope that Norman and Simon Sir refers to me as a Sir as well. I'm not sure. Is picking a team with all 10 out of the 11 have the capability to smash the ball, or would you consider playing the best players in the batting position in the case of, say, Hardick, for example? So I guess the point is, do you want a team full of smashers because it's the T20 format, or do you want people who bat in those positions and have the form of a player in that position?
Look, that's where it comes down to those conversations as a selection group. You know, what is your strategy? You know, Owen Morgan's strategy at the moment is he just wants to go for it. You know, that's he's backing his ball strikers. You know, the conversation we had around Joe Root the other day is a great example of it. You know, he doesn't feature at the moment because he doesn't fit the type of player that they're looking for in the team. Whereas, you know, other countries do it slightly differently. They have a little bit of glue in there, you know, to allow the back end to go big again. So, you've got to look at the players at your disposal and then try and come up with a strategy that meets their strengths rather than putting a strategy in place and then not having the players. So,
excellent.
So, yeah.
So
I found the question,
right,
and it's from Munchie. So he said Wilco, which is my nickname, so he obviously knows me. Could we go for West Indies and bring in Ollie Stone as well with Wood and Archer, 3 fast bowlers? Well, yeah, I'm sure Ollie Stone is in there thinking somewhere. You know, I think Ollie Stone will definitely feature in the Ashes down under. Because unfortunately the other 2 have not played a full Test series for a long time. So I think he would definitely be in the mix. He bowls a heavy ball, he can field well, and he can whack it. So why not?
So you're effectively saying he's a Test bowler?
No. I'm saying he bowls quick. At the moment, he will feature in the Test squad, but I think again because of his injury history, they're probably not involving him too much in the other formats, you know, until he gets or until they feel that he can do that physically. But saying that, you know, trying to hit 90 miles an hour out the park is not an easy feat. So yeah, he would definitely
just
be
got an embarrassment of riches in the one-day stuff. Do you think that they see? Because you know, Chris Wokes has been playing, hasn't played a winter. You've got Tom Curran, you've got Reece Topley, you've got so many other guys that they probably don't see as Test match bowlers, but one-day specialists. Do you think they're sort of saying, well, we don't need to? Ollie Stone probably isn't in the mix at the moment when it comes to the one-day stuff.
Well, there's no doubt that they would have. They knowing England and obviously scouting myself, I know what they do. Okay, so they will have very clear role clarity for each format of the game, and then they will identify their number 1 picks for each area, and then they'll go with their number 2 picks for each area. Okay, so that they want bench strength, you know, because obviously injuries will happen, and then they will decide, okay, how high risk is it to have this player playing in both formats, and if there's a red light there, then they will identify the format that's most important and then look for maybe the third possible option to come in. So, you know, in T20, Reece Topley is a great example. Okay, Reece was out injured for a long time. You know, I'm a big fan of Reece. I've seen him bowl since he was 15. He's a great lad. And his one-day skills, particularly in 2020, are fantastic. He might not have the pace, but his Yorkers, his slower balls, his thinking, being that his dad was a first-class cricketer as well. You know, he's come from that environment of cricket thinking. So it makes sense, if he's fit, to have him involved in the T20, like others. You know, my worry at the moment is Tom Curran. I'm not sure on the pitches that England are going to be playing on, whether he's good enough at either. You know, whether he's quick enough and whether his skills are good enough. Those would be the 2 questions I've got. Because if you haven't got pace, you've got to be outstanding with the skill side of it. Your execution's got to be on the money. And that's what generally Reece Topley's got.
So do you, when you're bringing players through, obviously the early stages of their careers as they're developing, do you earmark them from one form or the other, or do you see that they've concentrated on one and you try to explore the fact that they're doing, or do you like employ, let's have them play all facets, all types of cricket, whether it's T20 ODI or the longer form? How do you approach that?
So the danger nowadays is that when you're identifying talent, too many people specialize too early. Okay, and research tells us that. All right. So for me, I'm saying to young players, play as many sports as you can, play as many different formats of cricket as you can, make sure you work at all skills. So even if you don't see yourself as a bowler, still have a bowl in the nets. Okay, because Joe Denley is a great example. Okay, Joe through age group cricket was a fantastic batter, but also bowled leg spin really, really effectively. He bowled leg spin in adult cricket at the age of 15 in Premier League cricket for his club, effective. He bowled in the second team at Kent, won matches in one-day cricket bowling leg spin. Then he got into the first team, and unfortunately, the captain at the time, Mr. Rob Key, and he fully admits this, didn't rate his leg spin. So he kept telling him, don't waste your time bowling in the nets, blah, 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 blah. Whereas we were always saying, just keep bowling, because you just never know when an opportunity might come around and you want to be ready to take it. So fair play to Joe. He carried on bowling and look at where he is now. You know, he's opening the bowling in T20 cricket and getting franchise gigs around the world. So for me, yeah, it really worries me when I hear a coach of a young player say, you know, he's just this. You know, for me, young players need to do as much as possible for as long as possible.
Well, Stuart Broad's another example of that. I'm fairly sure he opened the batting for England under 15, didn't he? I think he opened batting.
You know, unfortunately, until Stuart got hit, you know, that really nasty helmet issue, he was a proper batter. He was a capable batter. And,
his actual form has really fallen off, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's understandable. It was a bad hit, you know. I've seen a number of players who've been hit, and it does knock your confidence. There's no doubt about it. So understandable, but yeah, you're right. He was a half decent batter, Stuart, for sure.
I mean, I would have loosely said he could well have been almost in the form of an all-rounder at one stage, because there were some innings that he performed particularly well. I'm just trying to recollect. Did he score a century at Test level?
He got 170. I think it was the infamous test when Amir and Asif got done for bowling those no balls, wasn't it? But him and Trott got
170 runs for someone who is now probably hard up getting past 10, and some of the most innings he's playing is quite a change.
He back in then. If he'd continued, he would have been a good number 8. I think. Like he would have been a pretty probably average 8.25 in Test cricket. Probably like a Wasim Akram sort of batter. You know, Mitchell, Pat Cummings, those sort of guys are in that sort of mould, aren't they? But you know, as Simon's right, you know, it's he opened the batting for England at 15. You know, you can tell when you see players that, and that's the good thing I think about batters, and Wilco will relate, is that the best thing that the most enjoyable thing that batters like doing is having a bowl. So at least you can, I guess it's not when you get to my age or Joe's age or 18, 19, because all you want to do is bowl, and bowlers always want to have a bat. It's at the kid level when they get pigeonholed or told you're not bowling today. That's when it's probably more of an issue. Is that?
Yeah, there's statistics out there that England have done over 10 years now, research program, and there is nothing in age group cricket until you get to the age of 17 that correlates to potential future success. So you might have scored hundreds and hundreds of runs or taken loads of wickets in schoolboy cricket, but actually there's no indicators until you get to 17 in this country. And that is based on probably 2-day cricket coming in at under 17 level, allowing batters to get hundreds. So that's a key marker. And bowlers who take 4 wickets or more at under 17s is another marker. You know, and it's an indication. There's no guarantee, but you know, Sam Billings is a great example. You know, Sam Billings hardly got a run in age group cricket. It wasn't until he went to university at Loughborough when we told him, you've got to get runs. You know, you're a fine wicketkeeper, but you've got to get runs in the modern day game. And to his credit, he worked hammer and tong and learnt how to score runs. And he came back and got some hundreds, and that made our decision a lot easier, because at the time we had another England under-19 keeper called Paul Dixie who was scoring hundreds at second team cricket. So talent ID isn't easy and it isn't straightforward. So for me, it's about keeping the door open for as long as possible with young players. Don't pigeonhole them too early would be my advice.
But it comes with development, and you grow up a bit. I played a lot with Sam, and I played quite a bit against with Paul Dixie as well. That's when there was only ever one that you would ever see as a keeper. Bilbo is one of the best keepers. I've been quite lucky. I played quite a lot with one of Richard Paisley.
Absolutely.
In terms of talent with the gloves, those two are by far and away the two of the best you've ever seen. But Bilbo obviously grew up, got a bit stronger when he went to uni, and I mean, you could never have imagined how well he's done and turned out now. If you sat here with him 10 years ago, you probably wouldn't have even said himself. And he's one of the most optimistic blokes in terms of his talent you can find.
Well, Richard Paisley is another great example. He was an off-spin bowler at under 11s. And we saw the size of his family and said, you're going to be too small. So you're quick in the field. Why don't you have a go with the gloves? So we turned him into a keeper. So that's another great example of not closing the door too early. So,
I mean, I'd like to bring out some of the Australian examples. Obviously, Steve Smith is a classic. He made the Australian team based on a position as a leg spin bowler, batting 8, 9, and whatever. He actually that was he was selected for that purpose. His batting figured somewhat, but it was his bowling that got him in the team. And look at the way he turned around. Then you look at a case of Dave Warner, who basically started playing T20 cricket and to a certain extent ODIs before he was even considered to play the longer form for his state. And
Kevin Peterson. Kevin Peterson was an off-spin bowler. Came over to Nottinghamshire, and that's when he started to develop into the superstar that he became. So there are plenty of examples out there of players evolving later in years. Don't get me wrong, there comes a time when you've got to be doing it or you're not doing it. And I think probably by the age of 22 is when the door closes. There's not too many come through after that.
All right, okay. Look at the other example I've got is Chris Lynn. Obviously, is an incredible pinch hitter, I'll call him. He actually, I have personal experience with him when he was a younger teen coming on a tour to Sri Lanka. The likes of Ben Dunk was another cutting, even Berwick Barnes, who became a rugby player. Chris Lynn was a proper batsman. He played shots. He played big shots, but he played a real sense of proper cricket. He could argue he's lost that and is not seen in that way at all, and he can score spectacularly, as we know, but has probably missed out on a potential test career along the way to opt for the franchise where there's money, sure. But he's probably been wasted somewhat at a time now in Australian cricket where we need someone to stand up. He could have been our Ben Stokes. Not that he was a bowler necessarily, but he had the ability to, or Kevin Peterson. He really has missed the boat on what could have been a test career as well as his short form. And I feel sorry for him. It's a bit disillusioning to see him in that manner. But there's one thing I'm going to break from your mold as well, and your thoughts are perfectly correct in my opinion. But Tendulkar was 16 when he played for his country. What would you have done with him? Let's just put Sachin Tendulkar in England. And
he probably wouldn't have played for England at 16. It's just a different.
Well, that's the point. That's what I'm getting at.
It's tough to say because he's a complete freak of nature, not in a bad way, but in terms of he's the exception, not the rule. But you tend, like another example, Lasith Malinga. I would imagine that if he was playing as a 13-year-old in England, he would be coached out of bowling like that potentially. And he would be told, you've got to brush your arm on your ear, you can have back injuries, and sometimes you've just got. And I'm probably have been guilty of it, not at that extent, but you get into that where you're trying to, and sometimes you just realise, especially with bowling, it's for him. I've spoken to other coaches, and it's your body is telling you what feels comfortable, and it might not be the case, or it's the textbook version of it. And I've spoken to Fells about it, and I think he feels the same, that for 9 out of 10 people, bowling like Malinga doesn't work. But for him, his body has told him this is comfortable, this is how you should do it, and that's Sri Lanka obviously very naturally.
Yeah, so he grew up on the sandy beaches. Yeah,
Exactly.
in Sri Lanka. So that's how he could get the pace with the tape ball on that surface. Okay, so he's a product of his environment, as we all are. Murali, his action was trying to spin the ball, and obviously when Murali was out there, it was hugely effective. So for me, it's understanding that what makes the play, as long as it's safe. Okay, let them run with what's effective, and that's the danger. Is that there is too much structure around players these days, and Jimmy Anderson is a great example. And this is no criticism of the people who were coaching him at the time. They were doing it with the right intentions, because his action potentially was going to cause him injuries, and they tried to straighten him up. And he became really ineffective. So he went back to his old action and started taking loads and loads of wickets. So the point you make is 100%, and I think people are starting to understand it, particularly in England, where we're probably over technical at times. Is that trust the individual, and if they've been bowling with it for 10 years, their body is
compensating
with it. Yeah, absolutely. So trying to make a change to make it safe could actually break them. So
you know very well, Simon, having been in Sri Lanka, and you had the likes of the Tilakaratnas, both husband and wife, available to you to go around the country. Or the example of, you must have met Kushal Gunasekara, I'm assuming, from Senegal, and he had a number of the children, misfortunate children or unfortunate children that actually had played. I'll give you an example of that. I was with Arjuna Ranatunga. We were playing a game on that ground. It was a British Parliamentary 11 versus Sri Lankan model. I actually played with the Sri Lankan team, which was quite fun. We went on the field. We saw a young spinner named, I think he was, his name eludes me now, but he was bowling spin. He was using, well, first of all, he could use both hands.
Ah, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Remember him?
Yeah.
And he would come on, and Kushal said, watch this guy. And he came, he had not worn any shoes. He had nothing to speak of. He had no money. And he came on and bowled in front of Arjuna and Kushal. And it was a shock. Another kid could bowl leg and off spin with the right hand. And that was brilliant, because Arjuna knew, as he did with Malinga, let him go, let him be. The guy had never worn shoes in a game of cricket. He was barefoot the entire time.
So the guy that bowled left arm and right arm was my under-19 captain, and I've forgotten his name now, but he's gone on to play for Sri Lanka. And then the off spin, leg spin. There's a guy now who just played in the T10 in Dubai.
Paul Adams. Looks like Paul Adams.
Oh no, that's Kevin. Kevin. Yeah. He's good as well. He was in the under-19s when I was there. And it is, they just, in their own time, they're playing cricket all the time, and they just play around with stuff, and it's so creative. It's great. And, you've got the two leading wicket takers in Muralitha and Rangana Herath that have come out of Sri Lanka the whole time, left arm spinner and right arm. That's a hell of a feat for a country that have only got 21 million people.
Absolutely, and that's a great testament to what could be fundamentally needed, or what is fundamentally wrong in a country like England and Australia currently. There's probably an element of metronome about their bowling and batting, an element of consistency and that driven, like that high performance approach, which doesn't take a natural talent, which we've gone through already with the likes of Malinga. It's quite intriguing to see that happen, and I just love the way that Kushal said, "Hey, watch this kid," and he came on and bowled and said, "Right, get him through," and not to touch his, maybe hone certain skills, but leave him the way he is. And we need to think about that quite a bit. All right, the Chris fan club. I've been hounding the Chris fan club, same as Adam Hollier. Well, there's been an admittance that it's actually not Adam, it's Sanvi. So we've got a name, and he's an Indian, so I'm assuming. So thank you, Sanvi, for that. We appreciate you becoming a member. We can see the emoji next to your name, and I'm very impressed. Oh, by the way, too, Chris, Music Harmony and I've been I'm sure he's included you. That so-called Fantasy 11 that we were talking about. What's the name of it?
Dream 11. Dream 11.
It's not available in Australia, for example.
Okay.
I think
you wouldn't have won anyway, so.
You're assuming.
Music Harmony. If Music Harmony's watching, I'll sit down and we'll work it out, and we'll see what's the best way to go. But it's a bit of fun, isn't it?
We're going to have a Dream 11, Simon. Yeah. We're going to have. I mean, clearly, I'm going to win. Chris is just quite severely. He's jealous. He's got a jealousy problem when it comes to my superior knowledge. Come on, Chris. Admit it. Just admit it. You get very uppity sometimes about. He mumbles, "Oh, how much you don't know about cricket." Then we get a stoush happening.
I had a question for Simon on the bowling front, and Munchie mentioned it, and it's something I do agree with generally as a coach. Do you think that fast bowlers, and I've obviously grown up with a few guys that suffered with stress fractures in their backs at age 15, do you think that ECB restrictions on only being able to bowl 4 overs in a spell or 10 overs in a day, do you think that contributes somewhat and down the line that they're going from 15 bowling 5 overs to under 17 cricket bowling more overs? Do you think that, like in Australia, for example, I don't think they have any restrictions. Do you think that building your body up and building strength up through as a cult, do you think that benefits, or is it a good idea to have or is it finding a good medium in the middle? Or
this is a hell of a question, and it's been there for a long, long time. Yeah, it started in Australia. That brought in the guidelines, obviously with Craig McDermott and co back in the day getting injuries. There's a lot of research done, and it's probably gone full circle. There's an element of me probably being a bit old school, which is, saying you got to build it up. But then when the sports scientists have shown me some of the evidence, what we did in Sri Lanka was we stuck to, rather than overs bowled, we stuck to a 7-4-2 program. Okay, so basically what we said was you can bowl as many overs as you like 2 days running, but you can't bowl 3 days in a row. Okay, so you can bowl morning and afternoon for 2 days, or if you're playing in a match, you can bowl 3 spells during the day, but you're not allowed to bowl 3 days in a row. And touch wood, when we implemented that, we hardly got any injuries, as in muscle tears or stress fractures. That was a huge thing. So whether it's amount of overs bowled or just the continuous bowling day in, day out, there are some of our lads will put on a system where you had to average out over a month. So they would monitor your overs. So actually bowling too less could be harmful as bowling too much. So, absolutely. We'd average it out over the course of a month. So say 120 overs per month. So 30 overs a week would be a kind of barometer that was with our senior players.
Okay, but can I just bring a point up here? I know this is harking back to a Jeff Thompson style performance. He bowled until he didn't feel like he could bowl.
Yeah.
How much does gut instinct go with the way that their own body can handle it? What I'm getting at there is some will obviously overstress themselves to strive to the point of ridiculousness, but the reality is their own body capability is known to them more than anyone else, and no statistic can really truly match that in the true sense of the word.
No, and I suppose that's where I got to as a compromise between the numbers and where we got to, which was, well, let's just let them bowl for 2 days and not for a third day. So much so that we got to a period where the day before a test match, the bowlers just had a bat, so we were able to get Saranga Lakmal and Nuam Pradeep playing for the test match because they weren't bowling 4 or 5 days in a row before the test match. So Excellent. It was just about managing that better. But there were questions. So if Saranga came to me and said, Simon, I'm a little bit sore, we'll take that and say, look, forget the other stuff. He's having a rest. He needs a rest. So they get to a stage where they're mature enough to know their bodies and know what they can get through. And I think, Jimmy Anderson was a great example where he got injured playing football, had a couple of jabs in his foot, and then he went out and took wickets the next day. So, yeah, the more mature player, you've got to ask the question and be guided accordingly, for sure.
Well, you've
I
heard
think
about
kids are
Mitchell
the same.
Swepson.
I don't think the guidelines are there for kids, because typically a kid bowls, something hurts, they tell you that they cannot be as tough. They're not going to, a 14-year-old's not going to suck it up if his back's hurt, to that extent. I think it's there for the constant build up, and then stress fracture you got. And it's not, I don't think it's there for my back's hurting today. I think it's there for the gradual build up over time. Does that make sense? Or?
Possibly, but I also think it's there for legal reasons, if I'm honest. The world we live in nowadays, unfortunately, we're in the UK and Australia, we're very American now, where there's blame, there's a claim. And I suppose, you've just got to have these things in place in case it ever comes back to bite you. And, it's a sad indictment of the world we live in, but you can understand why governing bodies have got to do that. Well,
Mitchell Swepson, we talked on an earlier show with Adam Hollyoak about his so-called stress fracture in the back of his upper part of his, believe the spine region, whatever the bone. I'm not medically inclined, but it's he had a stress fracture of the upper back. Now, I was bewildered. He's a leg spinner. I would argue, if I'm bowling leg spin, I would feel that something's not right in an earlier stage. Was he over prepared? Was he pushed too hard? Was he given some pressure to get something right? There's something not right there, and I'm not blaming anyone, but there's something not right that you can get a stress fracture as a leg spin bowler. I find that phenomenal.
That might be a case of the fact that he's been coached against. A coach might have seen his action, his natural action, and they might have just said, you need to just do something a bit different. And it might be, and I don't know this at all. I have no idea about mixed action, but it might be with a spinner that he's done what's naturally right for him. And because he's changed something, his body doesn't feel it's comfortable.
Could well be. And that's why coaches nowadays have to have insurance, because it's not all coaches have good intentions. They're not doing it because they want to hurt someone or make someone worse. Whenever a coach suggests something, they're suggesting it because they think they're going to make the player better. But we don't get it right all the time. And if it has an impact on someone physically, like you've just said, then that's when the insurance is there. Because some of these guys, Andrew Flintoff's a great example. It cost him millions of pounds missing out probably on IPL tournaments through injury and having cortisone injections in his ankle to get through, test matches for England. So you can understand it, their bodies, well, it's a short career. So,
It could also be the changing of a guard of a high performance coach as well. And I'm being generalised when I say that. Say you would come alongside and have a certain technique, and then Johnny over here has a different technique, and Bobby then follows with another technique. Surely that can impact upon the bowler. If a person has a technique which varies, which I'm sorry, it probably does often enough. I wonder how that's factored in. Because there may not have been Mitchell Swepson right now with his current coach. It may have been the coach before that brought that on, who actually changed him. And then,
well, I can give you a great example. When I was in Sri Lanka, under 19 World Cup, Asia Cup final, we played India, and we had a young man who bowled 90 miles an hour. So we're getting excited. We're thinking, right, we're going to the World Cup with some pace. Brilliant. Then suddenly he comes in with a sore back about 10 days later. So the physio comes down and says, we're going to have to go and scan him. So I say, yeah, no problem. Send him for a scan. Comes back, double stress fracture.
Wow.
Okay? We're like, what have we done wrong here? We need to reflect on this. Anyway, we find out the 742 program that we put in place in our environment was fine. Nothing had gone wrong. But what happened, he'd gone home to the outstation and his schoolmaster was saying, you need to bowl more, come to the concrete nets. And he was bowling on the concrete nets on top of the program that we'd put in place.
Wow.
So again, that had impacted, not saying it was the whole reason, but it was out of our control. The player was doing as he was told by someone that he respected, and it gave him a double stress fracture, and he missed out on the Under-19 World Cup, which was sad for him because he'd come such a long way.
Is he about now? Does he still play now?
Yeah, he plays first-class cricket in Sri Lanka, so he's playing for Colts in Sri Lanka. Yeah,
so something like that could have potentially cost him or it might. That could have, if you have a good Under-19 World Cup, it's a pretty good indication that you're going to have a good play international cricket, aren't you? So, I mean, he might still do it, but that might have put him back. He might never play for his country, and it's
yeah. And when you're talking Sri Lanka and the money that it's not huge salaries. So to play for his country would have been, could have set him up for him and his family short term. That's the disappointing factor.
And that's an extremely good point. And I'm assuming by that your experience in Sri Lanka has only bettered your coaching, because the awareness of not just your structure, but what's around them become more potent. And I'm sure you can't take that away from even in England or Australia, where a childhood coach comes back when they come to visit their parents for a month or whatever it might be. The same principles can apply there, where they may adopt a concrete worker, they may adopt more running, more lifting of weights, whatever it might be. That's their peculiarity that sets it apart.
Yeah, education is the big thing. The higher you go up, the less time you got with the player, really. So you've got to educate the parents, and if you can, educate the coaches that they're with on a regular basis, to try and sell them the bigger picture and get them to understand why we're asking them to do certain things. So communication, I suppose.
And that even goes up levels when you talk about an Australian coach as opposed to, let's say, a state coach. And we've got a Sri Lankan in the mix of the state, New South Wales, of course, as you know.
Yeah.
And he is phenomenal. He is respected so highly. I was at a state match recently, and to see them engage in discussion was probably the best I've ever seen.
He was head coach. I was part of the system that appointed him head coach in Sri Lanka, so I know how good he is. He's passionate about the game. He has strong views on the game. So yeah, I totally see that. But the danger is, as a coach at the highest level, is you can get into your own little bubble, and I can understand that. I can see that, but really, at the end of the day, it's about the players. It's not about you as a coach. So you've got to do what's right for the players, and if that's picking up the phone and talking to their state coach and say, look, what's your thoughts? How can we support this player or whatever else? Then fantastic. There was a period in England where it was very detached. It was the Loughborough bubble, and the counties were at each other regularly. That gap's got closer, thankfully. But yeah, you've got to do what's right for the players at the end of the day.
I think this is extremely interesting, to be honest with you, Simon and Chris, don't you? That this is something that, and I'm not trying to say that I'm insightful about it, but it is something that I have a deep concern about. And I've come across the Jeff Thompsons and their approaches, and Doug Walls with his batting, and we've got to learn from that, as well as be high-powered as we are now with the performance. It's not good enough to be one or the other. It has to be a marriage of those, and you have to listen. You can't say, "Oh, that's the way they used to do it." That's no longer the case. Well, it is the case that you need to hear that. You need to get an understanding of where the players are.
I think the other thing is we're more aware of injuries now than we were back then. You've got more scans going on. Science has moved forwards. So, there are players, I'm sure, that played when they were sore. And that soreness might have actually been a stress fracture without them knowing, but they would have had 6 weeks off rest. Physio would have just said 6 to 8 weeks rest up. They would have come back, played again for a month, and then probably had the same injury again and just rested. So, we're more aware. And I think, again, because of the insurance side of things, physios are a lot more cautious. They're always going to say, shouldn't take the chance because of the value of the player and the potential income stream for that player. So I understand that. But as coaches, we're always going to want our best players on the park. So we are always going to ask that question. and probably be a little bit disgruntled when we haven't got our best player on the park, as it were.
But you mentioned, I think, a previous episode about the life of a coach being 3 to 5 years, depending on their success in that period. What about a physio or the high performance side of the coaching? What do they have a so-called
I think
life?
I think it's slightly different for off the field staff, as I call them. I think theirs is all about relationships with the players. Obviously, they've got to get the diagnosis right. So if their treatment is going well, then it's about their relationships with the players. All right, they have a big part to play. And Paddy Farhart from your neck of the woods, New South Wales, was one of the greatest. You know, I was lucky to experience Paddy with my time at New South Wales on a coaching exchange with Trevor Bayliss. And that's what he had. You know, he could have honest conversations with players, adult conversations, and he had a knack of getting players onto the park, probably when the coach didn't think that would happen. And he also had a way of telling coaches that actually the player wasn't fit to play. He was that well respected. And yeah, so for me, you know, when I was looking at physios, relationships with players, S&C coaches as well, relationships with players, how they connect. You know, generally in the first few months, you can see, you know, players are coming to you and giving you feedback. But for me, the physio was huge for me. You know, he would give me information that could guide me. Never, you know, breach confidentiality, but they would be, look, I think he needs a few days here, or I think you need to have a chat with him. You know, that sort of stuff. So they have a huge role to play.
It's always a good, when I was playing a bit in the twos, Wilco, you'll remember him, there was a good physio at Kent, Max. I can't remember his name, was Max, and he was played in the warm-up, played football, and everyone just liked him. And I think when you have that relationship on a more personal, you like him, he's having a laugh in the changing room, I think you automatically respect people more when you like them. Like if he's sat there going, I know you, I think it's not right to say them. If you think the guy's an idiot, I think you're more likely to think, actually, what do you know? You know what I mean? So it's, I know that he obviously moved on, but
I have to say I've been lucky throughout my career as a player and a coach. I've never experienced a bad physio. I've had a few bad S&Cs, but from a physio point of view, everybody that I've worked with have been outstanding at their job. So I've been very lucky there.
But Simon, it's also a character that you have that brings it out as well. Your demeanour is something that's very welcoming, I think, and that's a common comment that I've had made to me, especially from the girls in Sri Lanka. They all got along with you, and I can tell you that's not easy for you to do.
I was about to say, wait till you get naught and play a rubbish shot. It's not quite so welcoming there when you trudge back into the changing room and you're 2 for 1.
No, I think we all mature, Norm, don't we? You know, there's no doubt I made mistakes when I was a young coach, and Vern probably experienced a bit of that from time to time. Yeah, you learn, don't you? You learn from your mistakes. I always believe you're not a coach until you've got some grey hair. And you seem to get a little bit more welcomed when you got a bit more grey hair. So yeah, it's a journey. It's a journey, and as long as you learn along the way, and you never stop learning, I don't think in our careers, and hopefully you keep improving. Huh?
I think that's the same with life in general, isn't it? Like for what I do, you know, I work in the mortgage market. You know, I've definitely had clients who are older than me say, "What do you know?" You know, because you're in your. So I completely agree. And
what do you know, Chris? What do you know?
Well, I think that just in life, people tend to look at the younger football managers. It's why don't people respect Eddie Howe or someone because he's 31? You know, he hasn't played at that level. He hasn't been there, seen it, done it. So it's an interesting point, yeah. And I think that it's totally right, isn't it? Especially when imagine you will go with senior players.
Sorry, I got a bit of breaking news. Brian Murgatroyd, who's obviously the media manager for ECB, has just posted on Twitter a photograph of the pitch, okay, which is very intriguing. And he said it's a surface used early in the series.
Oh wow!
So it looks. If
I look at it, red or black.
Well, I can see roadworks going on in the middle of the pitch there a bit. it's not. I'm not saying it's Michael Vaughan like in his defense, but there's certainly some pretty decent cracks there in that pitch, and it looks more of a traditional fourth day wicket to me.
Well, low scoring T20 then, are we saying?
That shows how good the wicket is. The traditional fourth day wicket that's been used for 40 overs.
Well, it looks very inviting for.
Here we go. Amit's whacked up red pitch. So
very intriguing. I mean, Brian, look, I've got a lot of Brian's an amazing guy. I've got a lot of respect for him. He's such a welcoming fellow. And this is a great example where he's using that to provide some understanding of what was what. It's very interesting. I think it's great.
So do we read into this then that they're trying to take out England's firepower?
Yeah, slow and low.
Yeah, so take out the Joffrey Wood effect and bring in more spinners for them. So that might mean Moeen Ali plays this game.
They might see that as a natural. It might actually play into. I would imagine that England's rotation policy probably would have had Archer or Wood not playing all five. So they might have been intending to bring in Moeen Ali at some point anyway. So maybe India is saying we want to put some doubt in the mind of Owen Morgan if he wins the toss. Maybe they're sitting there going, play to our strengths, and if he wants to chase, fine. But we've got three spinners on a used wicket. It'll make it difficult. So
I think you're right.
But let's be honest. Let's be honest here. I mean, a wicket square into its fourth T20, regardless of where you're at, there's an element of a worn square. Let's be honest. They couldn't have kept some of it fresh and as a daisy. So it's expected that the fourth and fifth T20 would be a turner or be worn somewhat and would not necessarily take on the pace and bounce of the Archers and Woods. So that's quite understandable. It's not necessarily a doctoring or attempt to phase out, but there is that
home advantage, Norm. Home advantage. They've got to get back into the series, haven't they?
Absolutely.
You know, they've got to win this one. So it's a strategy, and you can't criticize them for it. It's what you do.
I think the problem is with what you're saying is that if what we're saying about the toss being basically dictates the game, which I'm not saying it will 100% of the time, but if it's a large factor, they're basically that takes out the skill of side. They're basically leaving this series on a toss of a coin by putting out a wicket that might spin more. They're saying the toss might not be so important, and we'll use our three spinners. We'll come into the game.
Absolutely. That's well said. But Simon said earlier, I'm not sure whether you heard about that, Chris. But the reality is, this is a time when Owen Morgan would applaud batting first, would actually encourage batting first, regardless of the toss, so as to test the team in preparation for a World Cup. If they could handle what would naturally or normally have been a dictated loss because of the fact they've lost the toss, that could be a great way to challenge their players to come through that. I think that could also be an element of what's going on.
Owen Morgan is, and from what press, he's a very positive captain. He backs himself, and you know he'd go over he'd take. If you're playing in his side, he has full confidence that he'd go over the top of the trenches with you. Like he's got, and I think that he wouldn't. He's a sort of captain that would say, you know, we are going to bat first, and we are not going to chase, and we are going to try and back ourselves to win. But Owen Morgan made no bones before the series that he wants England to be challenged on slow turning wickets. He says it literally in press conference. We want to play on these slow turning subcontinent wickets in preparation.
This could work out perfectly from England's perspective of preparation for the T20 World Cup. The fact that if they do play on a couple of slow turners back end, they'll learn more about their team than if they didn't. So for me, this could be perfect for them.
Well, they've all huddled around. Paul Collingwood's has had the honour of providing Owen Morgan with his 100th cap in this particular.
That was yesterday. That was the last game, wasn't it?
Hang on. This is the 19th of March. What's today? It's
18th today. Josh Butt.
Okay, we're saying 6:17 p.m. It's saying Johnny Bear. Okay. No, sorry. So Johnny Bear. Was it yesterday? Well, I must have got the commentary wrong. Is that because it's referring to today's match? It's talking about a summary of today's match. Maybe I've got it wrong. So that's already been done.
I also don't think...
Was it Johnny Berto's 50th T20I in the previous match as well?
Possibly. He went past 1,000 runs, didn't he?
Yeah.
I also don't think that, and I know India have 3 spinners, but if Moeen Ali comes in, I still think that England's spin attack with Moeen and Rashid is as good as Chalal, Sundar, and who's the other one they've got? I don't see it being. I don't see England being at a disadvantage having to pick Moeen Ali. And they still have 3 seamers as well. So Tom Curran can bowl.
Where I'm coming from is that India know that they can score freely against those bowlers.
Yeah.
The difference between the 2 teams at the moment is the 90 miles an hour bowlers.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
that's what India are doing if they've changed conditions is to try to level the playing field a little bit more.
But it's also a compliment to England as well.
Absolutely.
So Nazar Azam's out of quarantine, they're saying as well. Is that something that it's just happened? Is it his first day out of quarantine? I'm not sure.
He's obviously rated very highly, and he's very new in the IPL, and he did well in Australia. But I think that you can get, like with Axar Patel in the Test arena, you can get carried away quickly with new guys coming in, and he's had a good series, I think he's only played 1 or 2 IPLs national, hasn't he? So it's difficult to come in on, for a fast bowler, left armer, you don't mind playing at the Gabba or in a bit more pace. He's very good Yorker wise, so it's a completely different game as those bowlers playing on different wickets, isn't it? So it's a different kettle of fish running in at Inform, Butler, Roy, Milan, Morgan. So England are a good outfit, and it's good to see him back. But you can jump the gun too quickly with some of these guys. He's talked up in the media as like a saviour or like the next coming, and sometimes you just got to let these guys just get on with it and see what they can do.
Especially in 2020, 2020 is so, you have someone who has a day out and you're a goner. So,
but it's like we were saying after the second game, everyone was saying how well Shardul Thakur bowled. He bowled first, he bowled those cutters when the pitch was bad. He bowled pretty much the same spur in the third game, but because we were chasing, the pitch was a bit easier. He got whacked. So it's, you have to look at conditions and say that guy's not just become a bad bowler in one game, because it was much easier to bowl first innings, as England have showed. Look at Mark Wood and Jordan got whacked in the second game, but they bowled brilliantly in the first innings. So it shows. I think India, the BCCI, will be disappointed that it's quite clear that they're difficult wickets to bat on at Ahmedabad, and it showed in the Test matches. I know we've argued the point. They're clearly difficult wickets, and if they're hosting World Cup finals or one-day 50-over games there, they won't want it to be tricky games. They have a lot of pride in the 2020, and in the IPL, if those games are dictated by the toss, they play day games there, and it's 120 plays 130 or 130 plays 110. They won't like that, so they need to address that, I think.
Well, I think the IPL gives them the opportunity to try and find the right blend and the right method, because, like I said earlier to Norman, you don't want the World Cup final coming down to the toss.
Yeah,
no, absolutely not. They've got the headlines on the preview that have been given by Quick Info are stick or twist for England, India with series at stake, and that's true. It is at stake for India. It's on the line. They've got to win. But stick or twist for England, I guess, are they going to stick to what they've got, or are they going to twist what they've got? I just hope they follow your lead, where they say to bat first.
I just have a gut feel that England want to try and get as much out of this series, not just confidence-wise, but to prepare them for that World Cup. I don't know what it is. I just have a gut feeling today that 2-1 up in the series, there might be a few surprises there.
It's exciting to think that way, actually. The toss can't be very far away. Chris, it's about a minute or two away.
Yeah.
Here we go. So they've just said Shivam Shah said it's the same pitch that was used for the first game. So that's the Blacksaw.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
There's a lot less grass. I think that England are in a great position that they have full. They know what their best team is, and I think we've probably seen it in the first 2 games or first 3 games. They're not going to change. Before we won the World Cup, Owen Morgan came out, I think, the year before and said, "This is pretty much our 15. We've got a squad of 15. 1 or 2 might come in and out, but this is going to be the team we've got." And I think that with the 2020 World Cup in mind, we've pretty much seen 10 of the 11. They might bring Mo in depending on the pitches, but they've got a theory and a strategy that this is the team, we're just going to stick with it, and that's it. One might come in depending on injury or conditions, but and I think India is similar. I think that India, we spoke about the other day, I think that their balance is lacking with the 6th bowling option, and I think in the World T20, Hardik will bat 6, and they'll bring an additional spin or an additional bowler in to have the balance. I just think in this series,
when it comes to the World Cup, they'll have Jadeja back fit, won't they?
Yeah, I just don't see why.
Well, you'll have Jadeja and Boomer coming back into that attack.
Shami,
they're not far away. They're not far away. I think they're just looking at players in case they get injuries.
But that's one point. I think that they know what their bowling attack will be, 100%. If you said to them, what's your bowling attack for that first 2020 game, everyone fit, they'll be able to tell you. I think they're playing the extra batter in this series is because they know roughly what their squad will be of batters, but they don't know what order or who's going to bat best where. So I think that they're sacrificing a bowling option in this series, give the batters as much chance as they can to nail down a place or to see what the best formula is. Because if Kishan comes and opens batting today, Mo and Ali will probably open the bowling. There'll be different. I just see that they like KL Rahul. As I said before, his 2020 record is ridiculously good. Comfortably better than Rohit. So they obviously see him as opening the batting with Rohit. Then it's got to be Kohli 3, and then Iyer or Kishan at 4, hasn't it? Pant 5, Hardik 6, and then back in all the bowlers.
Yeah.
Chris, you've got a fan club, we know, a person called Sunvi, but there's also Vishal Malik, who's actually a member of the Chris Vernon fan club. So it's more than one single person here. This is now getting out of hand.
There's hundreds and thousands.
Let's not get to that. Let's calm down a bit. Maybe that
England
was the train
bowling.
you had last night when you're on that
What's
balcony.
happened, boys? England bowling.
I wonder who won it though.
England won the toss.
Did they?
Yep.
Interesting.
I think it's just
I have the teams.
I think depending on the wicket, it's a strategy. I think Morgan and in world cricket generally at the moment.
Okay, let's read the teams. Let's see if you can you read that?
No.
Chris?
I can.
Okay.
Roy Butler,
Milan, Bairstow, Morgan, Stokes, Sam Curran, Archer, Jordan, Rashid, Wood.
Same team.
Unchanged.
Same team. So that hasn't changed.
Want to try and win the series. Yeah.
And the Indian side, Kohli, Sharma as in captain and vice captain, Kishan, Rahul's in, Shreyas Iyer's in, Pant, Pandya, Sundar, Thakur, Kumar, and Chahal, unchanged.
Same time.
I said they have made it very clear with the selection in the last game that they want KL Rahul they're giving him as much chance to find form and to. If you compare stats, him and Rohit are arguably in different leagues, in 2020 cricket. So, it's a tricky one.
I need to just clarify this. I scrolled too far up WhatsApp. I've seen the previous.
Oh, you just read out the previous game. Here's an interesting question. We talked about the day-night.
So I scrolled too far up. My apologies. But I think that's amusing. Now we're going to have people running around thinking that's who's selected. But let's just see what really happens.
Here's an interesting. We've talked about how the toss and day-night, the due factor. Now that they've scrapped the crowds, could they not move it to a day game? I know you've got television, but the TV's there anyway. They're not resetting up or anything. Do you think that they could have maybe for the last one, they would have had a week's notice, said, let's play a day game with no crowds in? They know there's no crowd. They're not like they're selling tickets.
What's the timings and that for, the TV schedules have all been set up around the world, Chris. That's a huge, that's a huge change for broadcasting.
I guess it'd be easier in this country because it's just cricket has its own channel on Sky Sports and they only show old highlights, don't they? So
they've sold the TV rights to countries around the world to maximise their viewing figures. So I would imagine that's why they're day-nighters.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see sides.
Sorry, because we should have had the sides back by now. It seems to be delaying that one a little bit.
I'll see if I've got it on BBC Sport. Doesn't even get. There's a big horse racing week this week at the moment. So
England have gone for an unchanged team. Unsurprising, the circumstances, no run out for Moen just yet. So that's come through. So, well, I was right, despite the fact that I had a WhatsApp mistake there. And it's even funnier than that. I want me to tell you what else has happened. While I was playing with it, I accidentally hit the record button and I recorded a message and sent that to the media group. So I had to delete that. It's a bit of a shocker. No one saw it, so it's all right. It was just, I probably was mentioned aside. So no, here we go. Yeah, so England have gone unchanged. So that's taken that factor out, certainly. I would assume, I would argue that India will do the same and not change, especially having won the last match. And, having won with that squad before.
I do think it's interesting, though. I do think it's interesting that they're playing on a used pitch and England are still back in the dew factor. It's going to be really interesting to see if spin plays its part.
Simon, you'll have to tell me because I'm not sure. Norman might be the same. How far in advance would England have not, like before the start of the series? I'm assuming that they might have said pitch 1 is on game 1, 2, 3,
No.
2, 3. They wouldn't know until later. I didn't know if you had to say.
You literally know the day before.
Okay, fine. People in the comments
I have got the sides now.
Sky and Ishak.
So it looks like Sky Yadav is actually in this time, and Kishan is not.
Groin injury.
I've got it here.
Yes.
Sharma, Kohli, Pant, Iyer, Yadav, Pandya, Sundar, Thakur.
The bowling attack's the same. It's just
in for Chahar.
it's just Iyer's in for Kishan based on a groin injury we're hearing. So otherwise England are intact as well. So
they've changed the bowler India as well. They've changed Chalal to Chahar.
Correct. It's hard to pick up because once let them change. You're right. So Rahul Chahar.
Someone will have to tell us. There's 2 Chahars. There's a seamer and a spinner. Is Rahul Chahar? I think he's the leg spinner. I think
Must be a like for like, surely.
Yeah. I think Deepak Chahar is the seamer, and I think Rahul. I think he's quite quick and has googly. I think he's got a bit more variety. I think than Chalal.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll just read out the team for the sake of. It was the same team that I read out earlier, namely Kohli.
Hang on, we got Chahar is a seamer.
Okay. I thought Deepak Chahar was the seamer and Rahul was the spinner, but I could be completely wrong.
Chahal is spinning, it says there, Amit. But Chahar is in. So they're saying that the seamer has come in for the spinner. Have I got that right?
Well,
oh no. No,
which Chahar? You know Chahar is in. There's a Deepak Chahar and a Rahul Chahar.
The name on the team sheet is Rahul Chahar.
Yeah, let me Google it.
Okay, so
Amit now apologising. So it is the spinner. Yeah. Leg spinner from Mumbai.
Thank God for that. All right, so again, I'll read out the team. Virat Kohli's captain with Rohit Sharma as the vice captain. Rahul, Pant as keeper. Shreyas Iyer, Suryakumar Yadav, which is Sky Yadav. Hardik Pandya, Washington Sundar, Shardul Thakur, Kumar, and Rahul Chahar. So there is the one change as we picked. There were in fact 2, with 1 being forced by injury. And I'm kind of happy for Yadav because he didn't have a chance to bat in the previous match, and they rate him very highly, and it'd be nice for him to actually bat. And where he's positioned the batting order will be interesting, whether he will go like for Kishan. I'm assuming not. It'll be Sharma. Sorry?
Kohli has to bat 3. I don't care. We spoke about it the other day. He's the best in the world. You can't. They said, I saw on Twitter, 41 games he's captained in 2020, something like that. He's got batted at 3 in 21 of them. He's basically sacrificed his slot for Suresh Raina. You know, the guy is comfortably the best in the world. You know, I know he's been a bit out of form, but
stats tell you've got to win games with your top 4. Stats tell you that. So he's got to bat as high as possible.
So
interesting.
Okay, you've just said Rahul, Sharma, and then you're saying Kohli, and you're saying 4 will be Iyer or Iyer. Okay.
I imagine Iyer. He's in possession, isn't he?
Yeah.
Pant. You see, they sent Pant in the other day. If they're 20 for 3 again, and Wood is steaming in, and I might send in Sky and just could you keep Pant back? I don't know. It's a difficult one, but you know, Yadav's going to have. If India do lose early wickets and Mark Wood's running in, because I guarantee, like they did to Kishan the other day, it won't be a floaty half volley. It'll be straight up and chest high or straight at his head. So it's a. You might have a it's a bit of a baptism of fire, isn't it? It's a much different game. But interesting, all the talk in this chat on Twitter, get rid of Rahul, get rid of Rahul. I admire Kohli and the coaching staff standing up and saying, no, we know how good this bloke is.
It's people saying get rid of Rahul from different states, though. That's what I would ask the question.
Yeah.
Is there a player from their state that they want in the team?
There's no doubt. No.
He is clearly, they've made it very clear that he's opened the batting of Rohit, and he will given as much time as possible to find form. And you have to, I like that. I think it's really good that the easy option would have been to drop him. I don't know if Kishan, they said he's got a groin injury, how bad it is, or whether it's just one of those things. You're not quite feeling right today. Okay, we'll just manage it for this game. I don't know how much that will be there, but they're sticking with him, and it's good. It's important. If like with Jason Roy, I think we spoke about it. I think Owen Morgan sort of hinted that if Jason Roy gets 4 noughts in this series but finds form in the 5th one and wins us a World Cup, we don't care. He's there. He's one of the best in the world. He'll be given every chance to make an impact.
Yeah. So okay, but so in terms of the Chahal out and Chahar in, it's like for like in terms of bowling. So it's a spin for spin, and Chahal has been pretty damn expensive, hasn't he? I think that's a fair call.
But that's the nature of leg spinners in 2020 cricket. They do go for runs. You're not, very rarely are they going to go at, Rashid Khan is probably the exception, not the rule. But if you pick a leggy, and Wilco's picked lots of 2020 sides, you're probably happy for him to bowl 4 overs 2 for 32 every week, aren't you? If he goes at 8s but gets you 2 big wickets, you probably.
The other issue as well is, with the exception of the Afghanistani boy, the analysts are on top of the game nowadays. So as leg spinners, you have to keep evolving. If you're still the same way as you were 3 years ago, batters know what's coming.
Yeah.
So it's not easy. It's not easy at all.
Can we just have a little look at the questions? There's been a few that have come through. Gareth Banker has been talking with Music Harmony. There's been a discussion there about Sky. The reality is Sky's obviously well rated, and because he gave it back to him with it. Okay, so there's a discussion about some aspects of Sky being in the side. Look, I applaud it. I think it's important that he's back. Okay, it was due to an injury, all well and good, but he deserved a chance again because he got to play but didn't bat. He's deserving of a chance, and I'm very glad they brought him in. I think there's a lot to be said about this side. I think Kishan, pity he's not there, but I think the Sky, I've got a feeling it's going to be his day. I've got a feeling he's going to be needed, and he's going to play a prominent part in this particular match. Do you think England will win or India will win so far, and what you're seeing in terms of both selections, the teams, and also the fact that the toss has been in England's favour?
I think that England will win. I think that they'll rattle early. I think that Archer and Wood will come out firing. I imagine that Rashid will probably bowl the first over. I just think that chasing, and for both sides, I'd probably say India would be favourites if they're chasing. Clearly, they don't think the pitch is going to have that big a say. I'm back in England. I think that they're just very, very good, and they like chasing.
Yeah, the toss has been a huge factor so far. So you've just got to go with percentages here, and I think that's what England have done. If the pitch deteriorates in such a way, then again, that's the learning they get from this experience.
So
I've got to go, guys. I'm going to leave you to it. We'll catch up soon. All right. Thanks.
Thanks a lot for your time. It's been well appreciated.
I will be 2 or 3 minutes as well, if that's Norman. We can round it up.
Okay. Let's just quickly get back to the point, though. England are unchanged, correct? In their batting, in their lineup.
I believe so. Yeah.
And India have got, you would argue, a forced change, but have made one significant change with their leg spin bowling.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. I do think you're right in terms of saying that they've got a situation where England should win based on winning the toss, having a stability of the performance, but let's not take out the fact that India are going to be playing for their series here. They might pull the rabbit out of the hat.
I just don't see who put Amit Ambakar said that India will get 200. It's a used wicket, and that wicket wasn't easy to bat on in the first game. You know, the wickets aren't getting flatter. You know, they're getting easier to bat throughout the game, but batting first, that wicket, if it's used, isn't all of a sudden going to be flat. You know, I would imagine that India will post maybe 140 to 150. I think 160, 170 would be a really good score on that wicket. It's clearly a difficult wicket to bat on, up and down, a bit too paced. It wouldn't have got flatter. You know, it's not got better since the first game. That's not how subcontinent pitches work. So, yeah, Amit, they've said it was the wicket use for the first game. Amit, black soil wickets. So I imagine if India will probably think if they can post 160, they've got a chance. But I expect England to do similar and to hit them hard early and to chase.
So Amit Ambakar, it is 16. I'm not sure what he wrote there. It's a bang deck. They're actually, what's his name? Morgan.
Look on Twitter, Amit. It's a used wicket. They've said it's the same wicket for the first game of the series.
They're definitely saying Kishan's a niggle. But Owen Morgan's saying it looks like a very good wicket to him. So
as I said, you can watch all of Morgan's interviews. He will never ever offer any excuse. It's always, we weren't good enough, they're better. He will never. You watch all of them when they lose, and he's not there. If he says their wicket looks a bit used or something, you're dropping in excuses already, aren't you? So he's very much. He's not an excuse merchant at all, Owen Morgan. If we lose today, it will be because we were poor. They would play well. It won't be anything else.
Which is quite fair. I mean, that's the way a captain should conduct himself.
He's brilliant.
Yeah. All right. I'm quite impressed with this in terms. Well, England's won the toss. That's in their mindset's a very positive mindset that they're going to be in. I do like what Simon said about the fact that they could have batted an experiment, but they haven't done that. That's fine. The reality is, India should make 180 today. That's what Gareth Banker's saying. It'll be interesting whether they can do that.
The wickets haven't been conducive to scoring 180 batting first. It's clearly tricky to bat on. I'd love to see 180 play. I think it's a better game, but the first three games have all followed a pattern. It's difficult to bat on first innings, and it gets slightly easier because the dew just zips it up a bit. And if it's the same wicket as the first game, which is what we've been told, there's no way that wicket's going to be easier to bat on at all.
Do you think Adil Rashid will open the bowling again?
Yes, I think he will the first over at the two right-handers. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Followed by Wood or Archer.
Yeah, Archer will bowl the second over, and then it will be Wood will probably bowl the third, I imagine.
Okay.
I'm going to head off.
Mark, thank you. Saying if Butler gets out early, England will struggle. Well, that's a fair point. If any of the openers get out, it tends to cause.
The England side tends to be, at the moment, India's batting is a little out of form. It seems that Kohli is heavily reliant on. England tend to be, if one of them doesn't step up, one of the others will. Look at the first two. Roy got 250s and he got 40 odd twice. Bairstow got some runs both games. Morgan's only batted once, got some runs in the second game. So it seems that England are a little bit more informed throughout the order, if that makes sense. Whereas I think India are seeking form for some people. So,
well, they're buoyant to bat second. They're very buoyant to bat second. They've been.
I think a lot of sides are. I think Kohli's done the same. Cool. I'm going to head off.
Well, this is going to be a bit of a. So okay, right. So we could be looking at a 3-1 lead to England after this game, with the last one
hopefully.
Still not a dead rubber, but it'll be.
No.
The concept of dead rubber's gone. I think they're going to need to experiment more, or at least have exposure more to the grounds, both England and India. So, all right. Thank you very much, Chris. We're looking at a situation where the game is some 10, 12 minutes away. Just one question, then we'll finish up.
Mm-hmm.
Target Jordan. Rajesh Ashwatthama said that they should target Jordan. And, well, I would argue
he's probably the weak link of that England bowling lineup, but he's still a very fine bowler. He's bowled well so far. I think my prediction, India will get 138, and England will chase it fairly comfortably.
Okay, so you're saying India 138, England will chase it down with an over 2 to
2 or 3, 4 down, something like that. A couple of those, yeah.
Okay, 138. I'll say I'm going to rate the young, well, they're not yet, not so young, Sky. I don't have to get some runs, and they might get 150 odd. But England will go very close and probably will win. But it's going to be a lot closer than we think. We might have a relatively close finish this time, which will be interesting.
Good for the series as well.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Any other questions there? I think we've just about done them all.
I think so.
Exactly. India's game is never a dead rubber with 1.3 billion viewers. They would never see that. In fact, no country should, whether it's Test cricket, ODI, T20s, should never be a concept of a dead rubber. You're playing for your country, for God's sake.
Yeah, I think Anuj, we mean in terms of series result, it's a dead rubber. Like India.
Oh, no, there's no doubt about that. But I'm
it's
talking
not
about
a
the
dead
mental
rubber
attitude
for players.
of players. The mental attitude of players will not be, oh, this is just routine to them. If they're playing for their country and they want to win that match as much as any other match, and that should be the pride of playing for the jersey. All right. So thanks, Chris. We thank Simon. His time has been fantastic. This has been a great hour and a half. It hasn't felt that long at all. It's gone so fast. Thanks again to your viewers coming on deck. We'll be back together at 10:45 p.m.
Yep.
Which is effectively 4:15 a.m. for me. So if the game finishes a bit early, we won't change for that time too much. We'll keep to the same time. At the moment, it's 10:45. The game is expected to finish around 10ish, but with the different press interviews and the like that go on, 10:45 is a good time.
Perfect. No worries. I'll see you later.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone. Eyes on
Cheers,
Cricket
Norman.
here with Norman Koch. Thanks, guys. Chris Vernon at Vern158 and at Norman Koch. Interact with us. We're happy to talk to you. Goodbye, everyone. See you later.